Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're continuing with our weekly shirim on Rav Tzadok HaKohen and imagination, based on the Sefer Machshavos Charutz. And last week we spoke about how the main purpose of thinking, the main tool of thinking, is going to be to work towards Emunah, to think thoughts of Emunah, to cultivate a mindset of faith. And that in spite of the fact that ideally we would want to have absolute clarity of things in this world, we would want to know with certainty that Hashem exists and that the world is upright, etc. Nevertheless, in exile, and in this world, which is an exile of its own, the main tool that we have is Emunah. Ba Chabakuk v'himir al achas, Chabakuk, the light of Gevura and severity, which has the ability of contracting the enormity of thought and reducing it down to the one thing that we need to think. He describes that the one thing that needs to be thought is faith, is emunah, is to connect to a light of godliness. And that light of godliness, we said, this point of faith, emunah, it does something else for us. It's not just the ability to believe in Hashem, because emunah is also the recognition that I'm imperfect. If I have emunah, it by definition means that there's a certain lack of clarity. And if there's a lack of clarity, it means that there's a deficiency within my capacity to grasp. And if there's a deficiency within my capacity to grasp, well, that shows that I am imperfect. And I am imperfect, I am not God, and only God is perfect. So the need for faith and the reliance upon faith, and Habakkuk coming and saying that every ounce of the Torah is there to reveal a simple thing, to come to a place of faith. Faith protects me from falling into the trap of feeling that I'm perfect. And so the one Eitzah, the purpose of being human, which is to be a thinking creature, and the truest nature of thought, which is thinking a thought that has the ability to penetrate into the heart and impact the body itself. The main content that I'm meant to be thinking is emunah. And emunah, like we said, is the opposite of strength-based skills. It's the opposite of identifying myself with what I can do. The opposite is true. It's acknowledging what I can't do. I can't know. I can't have full grasp. I can't have full cognitive clarity. And therefore, in that place, I have to choose faith. And this is why Hashem, when he sees that Avraham is offering up his faith, this is what Hashem loves most about Avraham. That Avraham had wisdom. Avraham had science. Avraham had precision. He knew all of the things that could be known with certainty. But what Avraham came to reveal is the secret of faith, the secret of what cannot be known. And it's specifically in that place of embracing the fact that in the end of the day, I cannot know, that we find that wisdom breaks apart, and what opens up and is revealed in front of us is the main point of our goal in this world, is to cultivate faith. Tzadok be'emunaso yichya. That warm, comforting, extended circle in the mind, which enables me to see everything in my life through the lens of meaning, which is ultimately the engine that drives thought, the capacity towards making meaning. And we're going to see, number one, where this faith comes from, how we can tap into such a place. And then what Rav Tzadok is going to introduce us to in Os Gimel is how this form of thinking, this faith, is going to be the main defense that we have against the negative side effects of imagination. Because like we said, the negative side effects of imagination are taking this creative capacity and this creative impulse that rests at the core of the self, which is the ability to imagine things. The Adam comes from a language of Madame. And the danger is that because I can imagine things, then I can come to feel that I am the source of meaning, that I am the one who knows best. I am the one who has it all figured out. And that leads to the kfira of becoming avodah zarah. And therefore, in order to protect ourselves against the negative side effects of dimyon, which occupy the lower element of thinking, and elevate and redeem imagination so that it can become the receptacle of Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah, so it has to come with this deep and ever-present awareness of deficiency, that I am imperfect. And that's what Rav Tzadok is going to explain to us now, how we have the ability to think thoughts of emunah. It's not something that just happens, it's a hand-me-down. The thought's unbroken, it's a gift that we have, it's embedded within us, it's not something that we can choose. Or rather, it's something that we can choose because it's always already revealed within us, as we're going to see. If we didn't have faith embedded in us from Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the Avos and the Imahos, then we wouldn't have the ability, like David HaMelech, to say Derech Emunah Bacharti. The only reason we can choose faith is because it's a hand-me-down and it's embedded within the very core of the self, the epigenetics of faith, which reveal that faith is a pre-existing issue. It's a pre-existing light. Faith is not something that comes after all of my explorations and my investigations. It's the ground upon which consciousness is born. Faith exists by dint of the fact that I'm a son of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And that's where the koach of faith is going to come from. And that's something that Rav Tzadok believes in fundamentally, deeply, and shows us over and over, more so than other tzaddikim. That he builds us up and he teaches us to look at our thinking and look at our feeling and look at our experience in this world as the way in which Hashem is revealing himself. Profound levels of Ruach HaKodesh and experiencing dveikus through the self. But at the same point, Rav Tzadok understands that the only reason we can speak of such levels is because we take it from the generations before us. We take it from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And the lowest generation is, in fact, the recipients of the greatest gifts imaginable because we come after all of the previous generations. And through that koach, we have the ability to stand up and own the power of our thinking, which is to choose thinking thoughts of faith, to ensure that we don't fall into the trap of perfectionism, and to allow us to endlessly grow in endless ascensions of feeling that I've perfected it, and then I'm coming to realize that I haven't yet, and utilizing my imagination to build palaces of Nevuah and Ruach HaKodesh rather than self-serving fantasies. And so we're in Os Beis of Machshavas Charutz, in the last point, which is Os Gimel. And then we're going to go into Os Gimel itself, where Tzadok is going to reveal to us more and more what this quality of faith is. Once we know where faith comes from, how this quality of faith is unique in its capacity to undo the negative symptoms of imagination and elevate imagination. Because as Rabbi Nachman teaches us, imagination and faith are two parts of the same exact coin, that both of them are decisions that are made in a place where there's not enough evidence. So once we understand that the ikar way in thinking is to choose faith, and we understand where that capacity of choosing faith comes from, it's a hand-me-down, it's a pre-existing condition, then we're going to see how choosing faith is ultimately going to be the rectification of the imagination and what enables us to live healthy lives of meaning-making, of living with hashgacha pratis. Rav Tzadok says as follows, V'gam zeh letov lanu k'yoyim hazeh, Shelule sheyiga Avram Avinu alav hashalom laha'amid regel ha'emuna gam kein al tila, anu minayin hanu lanu koyach l'schois lezeh, ki kol kochein rak me'reshes me'avos. Kamo she'amru b'Shabbos tzadi zayin aman aleph hem ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim she'enam rabihim b'Hashem. That in truth, this mission of Avram Avinu to reveal this secret of faith, to reveal the one thing that Hashem was going to see from him and say, this is why I love you. I love you because you're choosing to not know. Everybody else in the world is choosing to know, but Avram Avinu, you open up the path of faith. You stand on the other side. You're ma'avar over the chalal hapanu. You choose to think beyond rationality, and you choose faith. That's what Hashem sees as tzedakah. And the work that Avram Avinu did is not only for himself, but rather it is now going to be embedded within the DNA, the cellular makeup of each and every chelek of Eloi Kaimimal, and the soul that rests within each and every body is going to have this light. It's not only for himself that Avram Avinu struggled to find faith. Because if we're not for Avraham, who sturdied and revealed this pillar of faith that we're capable of standing on, we would have had no merit of it. It's not something that a person can merit. A person cannot merit to choose to find the path of calmness. All of our strength, all of the things that we're capable of doing in the lower generations is all a hand-me-down. It's all something that transitions down to us and is given over to us from the avos themselves, from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Like Chazal tell us that whether or not we are believers or not, we're the children of believers. Whether or not we are prophets, we're the children of prophets. We believe as the children of believers, meaning to say that our belief is not self-begotten, but rather it's a hand-me-down. It's rooted in the previous offerings of faith, which also received from the previous offerings of faith. And it's through Avram's faith that gives us the ability to have faith. And furthermore, Rav Tzadok says, and this is a proof that he brings very often to highlight the fact that all of the strength of Nishmas Yisrael and all of the profound potency that each and every Jew has, no matter how small that they feel that they are, no matter how low the generation feels that it is, Nevertheless, our essential quality is the fact that we have a Sefer HaYuchsen, that we come from the place of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That when it came time for Matan Torah, we were able to show that we're deserving of Matan Torah because we have this yichus. When we show up in Shemona Esrei, when we talk to Hashem, we're not saying anybody else that we know. We're saying Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. We're rooting ourselves firmly in the Avos HaKadoshim, whose actions are simin lebanim, the epigenetics of faith, pulsate throughout each and every generational shift to the degree that it still remains even so many generations down the line. That faith is still there. And furthermore, we know that Yaakov chavel nachla, so Yaakov is a chavel, Yaakov is a cord, it's a thread of connectivity, and the thread is made up of three strings, which is Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. There's a chazaka, there's a basis, there's a foundation upon which I can choose to enter into faith. I cannot choose to create faith. If I lived 1,000,000 years, I wouldn't be able to create faith. But because we come from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and we have a neshama, we're able to tap into faith at any moment that we please. That we have a tradition, not something that we receive, but something that's embodied within our very souls, that comes from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And the koach of the father and the parent is in the child. And Rav Tzadok says that this merit of the fathers and this connection and the bond of the fathers continues to remain. It's not something that's subject to erasure. It's not something that's subject to being cut away. This strength, this potency that's embedded within the soul itself will continue until the coming of Mashiach for all of the generations. Because without this koach, without this predetermined space within the self that has the capacity to believe like Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, through the Akedah, through all of the Nisyonos, through all of the light that the Avos sowed into the world, we have the ability of standing strong in the face of human nature, the Sa'or Shebe'isa. Without this koach from the Avos, without this recognition that we draw on the light that came from before us and we borrow light from the generations prior, we wouldn't be able to stand in the face of this world. And our Tzadok says Rav Tzadok that the reason we're capable of having faith is because the entire life, every ounce of strength that the Avos HaKadoshim utilized and exercised in this world was to bring about the capacity to grasp the truth of all truths, which is the absolute clarity in the mind's eye, as if the light is shining in my face, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everything, especially by Avram Avinu, whose midah was the quality of daytime and clarity. And so here Rav Tzadok is introducing us to something very powerful. He's saying, we have the ability to have emunah, we have the ability to have faith. We have the capacity to choose to believe in Hashem, to choose to believe, to see the world through a lens of the beginning is infinitude, the middle is the process through infinitude, and the end is the arrival back at a new level of infinitude. We have the ability of realizing Yichud Ilah and Yichud Tata, the upper unity and the lower unity. We recognize God's presence beyond reality and in reality itself, the singularity of God's unity in existence and the singularity of God's governance over existence. All of these things, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Our capacity to live with that light of tzaddik be'emunos yichil, that comes because every ounce of effort and every fiber of the experience of the Avos was digging down deep to find the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so that it should be revealed in front of us as clear as day. But if that's the case, if the Avos' job was to reveal the emes la'amiso, the clarification of God's presence as if it were the sunlight of the day and the illumination of the mind, then why is the gift emunah? Why is that presence of that quality of the avos within the children, which is us, why does it express itself as emunah, which is faith, which is dependent upon a certain not knowing or darkness that occludes the light of the seichel, that forces me to lean into a faith beyond reason? If the Avos searched out for Das, especially Avram, who was the light of the morning, Avram Avinu was meant to represent the illumination of the mind. So why is it that it's expressing itself by way of faith? Yes, we understand that all of our koach, all of our strength, all of the endowment that we experience on a spiritual level comes from the generations prior. And that's where we have the capacity of faith. But if they spent their whole time searching for clarity, why does it express itself by us in this secret way of faith, which enables us to deal with the opposite of clarity, which is emunas chabalelos? And here's where Tzadok is going to hint to a very deep idea, which is at the core of the entire system, which is that in truth, yes, you're right. Avraham represents Chachma. Avraham represents the clarity of the mind and the capacity to see things in the mind's eye in a clarified way. And as the source of Chachma, the Chachma of Avram, the beginning of Avram Avinu, that light and Avram Avinu's capacity to see everything as if it was clarified as the sun, you're right. That was what he was searching for. He was searching for clarity. But the main expression of Chachma, the place in which Chachma is meant to reveal itself most intensely, is specifically in Malchus. That the upper level of Chachma, which is the highest level of thinking, is specifically meant to undergo a degradation as ascent downwards into the nether territories of the Dira B'Tachtonim, of this worldly experience. And within Malchus itself, within that world of David HaMelech himself, which is the opposite of clarity, for that Chachma to express itself, and the way that Chachma expresses itself down the number line in the place of Malchus is Emunah. And so that, yes, Avram Avinu was searching for clarity, but the clarity of Avram Avinu is the clarity of Chachma, and the main point of Chachma is Abba Yesad Brata. That Chachma, Abba, is the foundation of the daughter. Bas Haya V'Kol Shema. Avram Avinu had a daughter. Avram Avinu's entire purpose was to draw the wisdom of Chachma, which is clarity, and ensure that it can make its way down into the opposite of itself, which is the lack of clarity, which is Malchus. And that's why Avram Avinu's entire process of going into Stone was simply to find the neshama of David HaMelech. Avram Avinu, yes, he was representing Chachma. But the main way in which Chachma was going to reveal itself down the generational processes was going to be that Chachma, which is clarity, has to undergo a shift and engarb itself within Emunah, which is the willingness for us to have a faith beyond reason. So it was Avram Avinu's search out for absolute certainty and clarity of Chachma that then gets revealed within the quality of the opposite of itself, which is concealment, which is faith. And that's why, even though Avram was searching for clarity his whole life, the gift that he gives to his children is the capacity for us to use our mind, our chachma, to choose to have faith, to choose the path of faith, to perpetually remember that I am not perfect, I do not know, and my seichel is not the sum total of the situation, and my observations and my calculations and my ruminations and my plans and my scheming, all of these different things bear very little impact when it comes to the truest nature of reality, which is concealed from the eye and only something that can be accessed by way of the segula of Emunah. And so after explaining that the Avos were searching out for clarity, and the question is, so why does it reveal itself to us by faith? So Rav Tzadok says as follows, Aval be'emes Abba Yesad Brata, Hi midas ha'emuna midas David HaMelech alav hashalom, Shu even ma'asu habaynim heim avin sheratzu lahagia le'emes v'lo brachu be'emuna. Rav Tzadok is saying that yes, Avram Avinu was searching for Chachma, and Yitzchak was searching for Chachma, and Yaakov was searching for clarity, but the truth of the matter is that the main site of Chachma's revelation is going to be by the daughter, which is the quality of Emunah, which is the midah of David HaMelech, which is the secret of the stone that was despised by the builders, is ultimately going to be the tippy top of the system. Who were the builders? Who were the Bainim? That's Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov didn't want Emunah. They didn't want the need to traverse the Seichel and live with a certain suspension of judgment and to live in the dream of faith. They wanted absolute clarity in this world. They wanted Clarkite. They wanted to come to the truth. They didn't choose faith. They wanted truth. But Avram Avinu also understood that truth is only going to be revealed to his children and to himself through the midah of Emunah, because ultimately a person can't have the absolute truth. Ultimately, a person cannot come to absolute certainty. A person can choose to live with faith enough to the degree that the faith becomes their certainty, which is derech Emunah b'charti. Avram Avinu understood that at the end of the day, the only way that my children are going to have access to the lights that I'm searching out are going to be by way of faith, which is why Avram Avinu, when asked about exile or Gehenna for his children, he chose Golus. Avram Avinu chose Golus. Avram Avinu said, it's going to be better for my children to have to descend down into a world of concealment, because in concealment, that's going to be the foundation of faith. They're going to be able to discover faith. And if they can discover faith, then that's going to be the best way in which my chachma is revealed to them, their capacity to choose belief from within concealment. Avram Avinu was the beginning, the emergence of the quality of David. Like the Medrash says, Heichan Matativ, where was David found? David was found in Sodom. That Avram Avinu descended down into that broke down place of Malchus to retrieve the capacity of V'nahapechu, which is the secret of Emunah. Avram knew that his search for clarity was only going to reveal itself later on in his children in their capacity to have faith in the absence of clarity, which is the main point of thinking. Because it's specifically in there, in Stom, Haisaha Emunah Begolus, that's where Emunah was most concealed. That's where all the Midos Ra'os came from. Scarcity and anger and evil. It was all because that was the hidden place of Emunah. That's where Emunah was hidden. The Achar Hafichas Sodom, and after the transformation of Sodom, which is the revelation of the light that was hidden in that place. Nemar Zed, the V'ya'amin b'Hashem. It's only there that we see that Avram Avinu has Emunah in Hashem, because he comes to realize that, I've been searching for Chachma all along, and in truth, Chachma is what I'm going to get, but it's going to be the Chachma of Emunah. It's going to be the willingness of my children to choose to believe in spite of the fact that they do not have the sturdy ground of wisdom and certainty to stand upon. Shahoitzi Avram hanitzotzos kedoshos misham v'kolot yisoid ha'emunah lahashrisho bezaro achrav. Avram Avinu descended down into the darkness of Sodom, down into the darkness of the nighttime, of concealment, of exile, of bargaining with God, of seeing evil in the world, of seeing injustice in the world. And when it was transformed, what Avram Avinu retrieved from there was the neshama of David HaMelech, the source of Mashiach, Rus, Moav. It's the foundation of faith, so that Avram can now bring that faith and apply it to his children. And specifically in these generations where it's so low and so concealed and so constricted. Now this point of unknowing, this point of bina, this point of emunah, which is also shaykh to bina, but this point of emunah, which was despised by the boinim of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov because they wanted knowledge, in the end of history, in the end of the generations, by ikvas of the Mashiach, faith is going to become the ikr zach. As Rabbi Nachman said, that there's going to come a time where somebody who has emunah, it's going to be a bigger chiddush than the Baal Shem Tov. And that ultimately the only thing that the entire purpose of reality is built upon is tzaddik be'emunah yichya, to live with emunah. And it's going to be a time of nekeva taseviv gever, where that feminine quality of the bas, of that concealment, of that darkness, of that inability to know something with certainty, is going to ascend, and it's going to be crowned in the tippy top of the entire system. And that's going to be what we're meant to work on our entire lives, the secret of emunah. Zak the Hiliger of Tzadok v'ha'emunah hu yisoid gadol. Lahatzil Adam medemyonos shel tohu umachshavos hevel sherov bnei Adam shekuim bahem kol echad kefish kiyaso be'eza taiva v'chemda mechamudos olam hazeh. So after explaining to us where we draw emunah from and why emunah is ultimately going to be the apex of thinking, where we choose to relinquish the ownership that we have over knowledge, and we choose to know that we don't know, which gives us access to a faith beyond knowing, which ensures that no matter where we fall, we still have the ability to stand up again. We draw that from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the gift of the Avos HaKadoshim. And like we said, the danger of thinking is where imagination goes awry, where I create worlds for myself and I forget that I'm a creature. And so says Rav Tzadok, faith is going to be the main foundation that has the ability to save a person from the chaotic forms of imagination and the wasteful, meaningless, fantastical thoughts that most people find themselves stuck in. Each person in accordance with their stuckness and whatever temptation, desires, addictions that they experience in this world. When Dimyon goes unhinged and it's unmonitored, each and every person is looking to fulfill themselves. Each and every person is looking to draw absolute perfection into their lives. And because a person is not finding it in the places of meaning making, they go out and they seek it out in the pleasures of this world. And the pleasures of this world have the ability to create a dopamine response and a feeling of well-being that for a moment makes a person feel that everything is all right. And so when a person tastes a momentary victory of feeling that everything is all right, they feel that everything is fixed. So the taiva in this world is going to be perpetually chasing the dragon of that experience, always searching for that sense of perfection. Each person according to their stuckness in their taiva, their chemda, mechamudos olam hazeh. When dimyon goes unhinged, a person feels that there's some perfect pleasure out there that can satisfy the ke'ev, the yearning of the soul. Emunah reminds me that I'm imperfect. The only thing that's perfect is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore the yearning and the not knowing is necessary, and it's not something that can be satisfied. So I might as well only live with emunah rather than trying to find fulfillment in some other things. But when not regulated, the dimyon takes a person into places of chaos and meaningless, fantastical thoughts of trying to search out the pleasure that I feel that my taiva is offering me. Like Rabbi Nachman says, that the way to imagine the drive is that the Yetzer Hara is like this fiendish creature running around in the shuk with a clenched fist and offering each and every person the fantasy that whatever is in that fist is ultimately going to satisfy their particular craving. And they chase and they chase and they chase and they run and they run and they run until they corner the creature. And suddenly he opens his hand and nothing is there. Poof. But the entire motivational drive after the Yetzer is the belief that it's going to provide me with some sort of shlemus. But emuna, like we said, is the recognition that I'm not shalem, and it's my ability to be full in whatever is going on in my life right now. And that saves me the trouble of chasing after artificial fulfillment because there's nowhere to run to. I have everything I need right now. Basayo, B'kol Shema, with Amunah, a person has everything. Kol machshos of shkuyim ba'oisa davar, when a person is addicted to the belief that there's some object or thing or concept that's going to provide them with satisfaction in this world, their mind is completely and utter focused on that with a singular focus. How am I going to get it and how am I going to find pleasure within it? Rev Tzadok is describing here in profound detail the process of triggers and cravings as described in the most current literature on addiction. That each and every person has their own focus point upon a particular object of desire, and they yearn for it and they crave for it all their days. And all of a person's thoughts are singularly focused and hyper-focused in on that particular thing. How can I get it? How can I make sure that I have enough of it? How am I going to find pleasure with it? And furthermore, like all of the different cravenous thoughts that the minds of most individuals are filled with. Not only that, but even when they're trying to connect to spirituality, the desire for that artificial form of wholeness, for that taiva, has the ability to balbel them and to take them out of their space. A person has to beg HaKadosh Baruch Hu for rachamim rabim to save us from our ruminations, to save us from being caught up in the cravenous cycle of desire and imagined satisfaction and craving and building up of tolerance, etc., etc., etc. Because like we said, when we're dealing with the lowest part of the mind, with that machshava tamidis, which is that thought without a thinker, so it's over there that the demyonos have the ability of making a person feel that they can be perfect, like kasa arura, like Shabtai Tzvi v'Chaverov. That expresses itself also in the belief that I can find perfect satisfaction by way of pleasure in this world. The only way to be saved, the main way to be saved from this, other than asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for rachamim, is ha'ikr hu lehitchazik be'emuna de'ein shum davar b'mikra v'hizdamnus rak ha'kol me Hashem yisbarach. How does emuna save a person? Emuna saves a person because it gives me a new operating system. It gives me a new outlook through which I can look at the world. Instead of feeling like there's something missing in my life and there's fulfillment outside of me, and only if I run there, chase it, crave it, use it, then I'm going to find satisfaction, always being driven by desire to step out of myself and to search out for the satisfaction beyond the self. Emunah reminds a person that there is nothing by chance, and there is nothing that's happenstance, and everything comes directly from Hashem. All of my experiences, my craving and my satisfaction, my situatedness, and all of the things that I feel. And when I come to find Hashem in my mind, which is the thoughts of Emunah, which is the main way a person is supposed to utilize their minds, I'm going to stop thinking about and contemplating and ruminating and scheming and planning as to how I'm going to get that thing that I so desperately feel I need. Because in truth, when I'm tapping into Emunah, there's nothing that I need. I have everything. Hashem is right here. If Hashem wants me to have that thing, it'll show up. If not, it's not my job to spend my time worrying about it. That's the anxiety and the bilbulim and the preoccupation and the racing thoughts about getting things and about that thing of satisfaction, this amount of money, that amount of friends, this amount of et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I can let go of that, then I'm going to be able to get rid of so many of the thoughts of the effort that I have to put in to try and get what I need in this world. Because I'm fundamentally aware and I have faith that there's no amount of human effort that's rooted in wisdom, that's rooted in knowing, that's going to increase or decrease that which is decreed upon me from heaven. That it's directly me and Hashem. My chachma is a handmaiden. Chachma, wisdom, it's a handmaiden to the relationship between me and Hashem, because in truth, there's a connection point of Emunah that is the ability of seeing directly to the Ratzon Ha'elyon, which is the Keser that transcends chachma, that gives birth to the chachma stima'a. And in that place, I'm done worrying. I'm done with my anxious ruminations because I realize that they're not doing anything. The kol shekein sham machshava bazel lo to'il lo klum. And I free myself from that need to be anxious. The anxious mind is terrified of the fact that it has nothing to do to protect itself from the imagined threats that it is sensing. And therefore, the mind says, if I can't do anything, at least I can worry about it. At least I can obsess over it. At least I can be preoccupied by it. We do this in all different types of ways. And with Emunah, we realize that this is doing nothing. The only thing that I can really think about is you, Hashem. Not only should I focus in on the fact that everything is exactly as it needs to be in my life at this moment, and I can live with the light of acceptance, which is the rectification of imagination, of not thinking myself as perfect, but accepting myself as an imperfect expression of Hashem's wholeness. And then I dig down deeper into the simple faith that that you're also here, Hashem. Not only are you mashkiach on me, not only are you illuminating my life at every moment and governing my life, but in truth, my life is not separate from you. You fill and you saturate all worlds, the Ein Oid Milvado, and in truth, I go from the Yichud Tata back to the Yichud Ilah, that there's nothing but you. Hashem Yisbarach Oyemer Alav V'Tzoife Al Kol Machshavoisav V'Afilu Hilher Kal Ein Ne'elam. And then I come to the awareness that my relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is so deep that there's nothing that's hidden from Hashem. All of my thinking, all of my feeling, all of my experiencing, it's all revealed in the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this goes a long way in freeing the mind from the tendency to ruminate and run after artificial forms of perfection. It comes to find perfection within. And a person, in accordance with their own subjective strength, we deepen and we strengthen our bond to this level of Emunah until I now live in a space where I am aware of God's presence, that certain holy awe of being aware of the fact that God is so big and so illuminated and so infinite, that all I can do is be in awe of his presence. And when I'm in awe of his presence, I'm experiencing a bittul. I realize that Hashem, it's you. You're the one who's motivating everything. Emunah brings a person to this place. This is the secret of what's written in the first Hagga'ah at the beginning of the Shulchan Aruch and Orach Chaim, says Rav Tzadok HaKohen Meilublin, of Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. And here Rav Tzadok is going to say one of the most wonderful things, and this is an idea that comes out very often in Rav Tzadok. But as we're going to see, for Rav Tzadok, thinking as a Jew is participating in the process of the unfolding secret of Emunah, which is the rectification of the imagination, which is the entrance into Ruach HaKodesh. And that even though prophecy has departed from us, nevertheless, there's a certain secret of Chacham Adif Minavi, that the wise one is on a certain level higher than the Navi, because we get to witness HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the thinking process itself. The belief that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us the capacity to intellectualize and to know and to understand anything in this world. And so what happens in the absence of prophecy, as we descend into what appears to be a happenstance world of things that are by chance and no longer illuminated by divine governance, Rav Tzadok sees a hidden line and a hidden thread of omni-significance as Rabbi Dr. Yaakov Elman, Schus Yaganalenu, wrote about. The omni-significance of all things, the all-inclusive significance. Omni meaning all and significant meaning everything is purposeful. There's nothing by chance. And that to see in the absence of nevuah and the absence of absolute revelation, to live with an awareness that there is absolutely nothing in this world that is not motivated by and animated by the ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when I can attune my life to that, that's that emunah. I stop chasing and I start living with this rectified imagination of finding hidden prophecy within mundane reality. And Rav Tzadok is saying the fact that the Shulchan Aruch is printed and is a book that's accepted in history as a fundamental text that becomes the basis of Jewish life. That Hashkacha has had it, that the first Haggah, that the Ramah adds onto it, and that it should be printed as such, is Shavisi Hashem L'Nevi Tamid, is orienting us towards this emunah. Because that's Ruach HaKodesh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that this should be the operating system that a Jewish person lives with. The fact that Rav Yosef Karo and the Ramah decided to write it as such doesn't mean that it's not directly decreed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not by chance. The Agaritos, in particular Masechtos, that's not by chance. There's what to learn out of it. We can darshan the Simonim on the Shulchan Aruch. Person can darshan everything, as long as it's in the right measure, which is the rectification of imagination, as Rabbi Nachman says, not to go chutz min hagvul in this, but rooted in this belief that when wisdom and when prophecy fall away, what's revealed is an inherent, intuited form of Ruach HaKodesh and the ever-present nature of the imagination's capacity to find faith. So we see that everything is purposeful. And the fact that the Shulchan Aruch starts with this, miksav miyad Hashem alav his skill, b'chibur HaShulchan Aruch v'hagasav. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Hatzlacha shined forth onto this book. Sheniskabel b'chol Yisrael l'sefer psak b'dorisenu b'chol mishpatei HaTorah v'hanagas adam al pitara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has decreed that it's specifically the Shulchan Aruch that was going to be accepted as the book upon which halachic discourse was going to be based for the determination of the laws and the actions of a Jewish people, a person in accordance with the Torah and halacha. V'adai lo ba'ud devarim b'mikra. This is not by chance. There's nothing by chance. Hashem Yisbarach Shalach es Rucho Aleihem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mashpia, his Ruach HaKodesh. He moved through their thoughts by way of the rectification of imagination. Lios kol devreihem mechuvanim gam ma shelo kivinu bahem, that their words are true even beyond the meaning that they placed into their words. Because the chachma of us and the Jewish neshama is not just wisdom, it's wisdom and more. It's wisdom that's the wisdom of faith, or the faith of wisdom. And so that even if wisdom says, this is what I mean, nevertheless, if we discover a certain meaning based on faith, so then that's also what they meant, because they were not thinking their own thoughts. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was thinking thoughts through them. Nothing was by chance. Hashem Yisbarach Shalach es Rucho Aleim Lios Kol Devreihem Mechuvanim Gam Ma Shelo Kivnu Bahem. Even what they didn't have the intention to do, Rabbi Nachman says a person can learn any sefer like this. They could find chidushim that the Mechaber themselves didn't know. It says as long as you're not deviating from the Shulchan Aruch. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has not left us when prophecy departed. Adarabah ipcha mistabra. The light of wisdom and thinking and the koyach hamedama in its purification through Amunah, that's not lost to us. That remains. And with regards to what I'm saying, says Rav Tzadok, and the significance of this in the Ruach HaKodesh, that's inherent within this. That Rav Yonas and Eibeshitz already points this out. How there's an omni-significance, and we can darshan the simanim, and we can understand the publication histories of things, and see that as part and parcel of the story of the unfolding of the Torah. There's nothing by chance. And it's absolutely true, and it's correct, and it's without any doubt whatsoever. All of their words are aligned with Ruach HaKodesh, which is the rectification of thinking. This is the light of wisdom of the Chachamim that is even greater than the light of prophecy, as the Ramban explains in Bava Basra, and Rav Tzadok uses so often. And the Shulchan Aruch, this thing that's illuminative of the capacity of the mind to be precise in spite of the fact that it's lost its precision. First thing we have to do is we have to stand up strong like a lion with gevura, to awaken that faith within ourselves, to overcome the tendencies of the body. And the Haggah of the Ramah is V'shivisi Hashem l'negdi tamid, that I should be fundamentally aware of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in front of me. V'adai zehu hashar laHashem, this is the gate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the derech of the tzaddikim. Shavisi Hashem l'negdi tamid asher kol ha'nechnasim la'avodas Hashem yisparach yiftachu behishtadlus zeh. The first thing that we have to do is Shavisi Hashem l'negdi tamid, emuna, that Hashem is everywhere and in everything, and that's where my thinking is going to be redeemed by way of faith, and it's going to save me from the broke down symptoms of imagination. It's going to redeem imagination and enable me to have more and more faith. Lehiskaber, la'avodas Hashem yisparach gvura sa'ari, to utilize the gvura like Habakkuk, who reduced the entire Torah to one particular thing, eish das lamo. Shutachles ha'gvura ha'gufanit, to utilize every ounce of strength in my body, that arieliyut, that Rav Kook describes in the beginning of Reish Milin, that strength and the severity of a lion that exists within the body of each and every yid, which is the capacity to overcome the basic tendencies of the body and to not give in to whatever pleasure and desire sends in our minds at any moment. The layish gibor bebehema, that the lion is the strongest of all animals. Shu ha'gevura behemit v'hagufanit, to work on our bodies, to be in control of the body, to rectify the body. Because as we're going to see, the body is going to be the final site in which thought takes shape. The main reason Hashem gave us strength to overcome our basic tendencies, to stop, pivot, and to reorient, which is what differentiates us from being animal, which is the koach of our thinking, to pause and say ma, to say what is this, so that I can generate a certain idea about it and relate to it in a new way. That demands a certain stoppage first and foremost. That's why machshava is always something that's rooted in the severity of the mind, to close off the mind from all of the overflowing thoughts and to focus in on one particular thought. The overcoming of the self, that's the truest space in which the mind is going to express itself. That's the tachlis of a person. We saw this earlier, that the Torah itself is a reduction valve that enables us to reduce, so that we can see exactly what the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. We have to utilize the strength of the mind. As it says with regards to Klal Yisrael, that it's those who are of strength have the capacity to fulfill his word. And so we see that Rav Tzadok is showing us that the main function of being human is thinking. The main way of thinking is the midpoint of thought, which is in between the origin of thought and the symptoms of unhinged thought, which is a thinking that enables me to frame a picture that will influence my heart and my body in a lived, experiential type of way. The danger of thought that's unmanaged and unmeasured is that it can create a sense of perfectibility, which is where a person's dimyon and imagination is no longer centered on their deficiency, but rather on their perfection, and that's what takes a person astray. The ultimate thing that we're meant to be thinking is thoughts of faith, to choose thinking faith, not thinking clarity, but thinking how in places where I don't have clarity, there's still a certain level of confidence and faith that I could stand upon. And that faith and that confidence does not emerge from within our own lives. It's not self-generative. It's not self-begotten, but rather it's a hand-me-down that's rooted in the Avos HaKadoshim, that they gave themselves for this. And even though they were searching for illumination and clarity, they gave us the gift of Malchus, which is the ability to have faith when clarity is no longer there. And when we can lean into this faith, it has the ability to rectify all of our imaginative drives and the broke down nature of imagination, which chases after artificial perfections, and it has the ability of helping me center myself inwards. Yitgaber ka'ari, and an example of this rectification of thinking is what Rav Tzadok is describing about the omni-significance of the Shulchan Aruch and the Svarim that are printed. So Be'ezras Hashem, we're going to see next week how Rav Tzadok continues to describe our responsibility to ensure that the ceiling of our homes are fixed. The ceiling of our home is our thinking, the partition that enables me to function as a human being in this world. And it's my responsibility to lean in and to understand all of the mechanisms of thought and the refinement of thought and the right ways to think about faith. Be'ezras Hashem.